Let's get started. Welcome everyone to our webinar ID for Beginners, webinar produced by the training working group of the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. So with me today are Untitled Mercy and Jeffrey Katteregger, and myself, that's Michael Heismeyer. I'm the chair of this training working group. This will be the first part of a two-part webinar. There will be an advanced ID webinar later on this year. And we cut this into three parts. We will start to tell you, well, what you need to do in order to get started with mapping with ID, and start introducing you to how to map different kinds of objects. After that will be my part here. The second part will be presented by Untitled Mercy, and he will be getting you a deeper insight into editing techniques and talk about some advanced topics there. And finally, Jeffrey Katteregger will be covering the issues of imagery alignment, the issues tab in ID, and how to upload the work you've been creating. Just in order to get a few things in order here, you're welcome to raise any questions you have. You can use either the chat window. One of us who is not quite just presenting will be happy to take up on that and answer that. There is also a Q&A window which you might be using. And just for your information, this webinar will be recorded and will later on be available on HOT's YouTube channel. So after that, let me just switch over to ID. So after a while, you should be able to see my screen here, at least the one here with OpenStreetMap. And well, ID is well integrated into OpenStreetMap, so there are basically two avenues how to use that. The one I'm going to show you first is when you're into OpenStreetMap, and as this webinar is presented by the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, I will also cover how to get into ID when working from our tasking manager. So let's first talk about a few of the basics. Let's say you navigated to an area you're interested in OpenStreetMap, and then you want to, there are a couple of bits missing and you want to add something to it. So the first and foremost prerequisite is that you have an account with OpenStreetMap and logged onto it. And if your user account is not visible here, there will be a button telling you that you should create an account or log into with an existing account. If you first have to open an account, that's easy. Just follow the steps. It's one of the self-registering kinds, and you will be sent an email where you should confirm that. And after that, you can use this account. Once you've got your account set up, this edit button will offer you a few choices, and in this webinar we'll talk about the first one, edit with ID, the in-browser editor, which has the advantage that you don't need to install any additional software. And then you'll dive into it. So first thing I'm gonna talk to you about is well, what is the arrangement of this user interface? Basically, you can find different bits on all four sides of the window. At the top is are the drawing modes. So we will soon learn that there are three kinds of objects which can be mapped in ID: points, lines, and areas, such as buildings. And there is, of course, also an undo and redo facility available. So don't worry if you've made any mistakes, you can correct them at any time. and there is the save button, which will be used for storing your changes into the OpenStreetMap database. On the right-hand side, you'll see a couple of options. You can zoom in or out. Of course, this also works with a mouse wheel. There are a couple of settings you can adjust. You can choose from different backgrounds. There might even be different map data than just the map data you can see in here. Here is the Issues tab Jeffrey will be talking about later on. There are not that many preferences so far, so that's not really worth it. And what is quite good to note is the help pages, and particularly there are shortcuts for nearly everything. So there is a keyboard shortcuts menu item here in this help menu. And if you open that, you can browse a little bit, and it's subdivided into browsing, editing, and other tools. So there are keyboard shortcuts for virtually everything, and you'll soon figure out which functionalities you use more often, and will certainly want to become familiar with any of those shortcuts. So for instance, those editing mode buttons for point, line, and area I was mentioning about can simply be accessed by hitting 1, 2, or 3. These keyboard shortcuts, by the way, are not user configurable, so you have to live with them as they are. Something which is one of the more important ones are here background settings. Why so? Well, we thought let's maybe, well, we see that here are a couple of buildings which have not, maybe also access roads, which have not yet been entered into the database. So that's a good idea to map them. Well, this is Esri world imagery. If you start ID right from the beginning, it is highly likely that it will come up with Bing, aerial imagery, and whoops, looks way different. So that is a point which frequently causes confusion, but always keep in mind, none of these different imagery layers was captured last week. They have a vintage which can range from anything between maybe 1 or 2 years down to even 10 years or more. And there are not that many imagery layers which can provide us some information how old these images are. If you work on one of the hot projects through the tasking manager, people there will tell you, it should be written in the instructions which imagery to use. And mostly they will also make sure, the project managers, that it will be automatically loaded when you start up ID. But and these considerations will be whether there is maybe cloud cover in the area, an issue in tropical countries, and also, of course, does it have high resolution, and how old is that? If you're just mapping outside of what, then you're on your own here. But an interesting bit could be the show background panel. We do have some information for some layers, and as you can see here, it tells you that the Bing imagery here in this excerpt was recorded, well, nearly 10 years ago. In this case, I think the Esri layer also has a vintage exactly, and that tells you, well, it's just 1.5 years old, which explains the huge difference. But these are basically the only 2 layers where we get vintage information from. So, but just to keep in mind, you can have pretty old imagery in here. And as you can see, this makes a real difference. So if you don't see things which have been mapped, don't blindly erase anything, because it might be that you're looking on pretty old imagery. So another important point here, if you zoom out a lot, then you will see that you can't edit any longer. At this stage, it will tell you, please zoom in to edit. The reason is that this built-in editor uses quite some resources from your computer, and it might become unresponsive if it would present all the objects which would be available here in this excerpt of that city. So we zoom in a little bit, and now it looks as if you would be seeing everything, but that's a nice pitfall, a real trap. There is a highlighted blue area here. It tells us that there are 1,070 hidden features. That means at this zoom level, editing is already enabled, but because it doesn't want to present some 1,000 or 1,500 or whatsoever features, it tells you, well, it just focuses on a few. Generally, this will be the road network, as we can see in here, maybe some points of interest like religious places or schools and things like that, but not the individual houses. So you should always zoom in until this blue message disappears. The number shrinks at a certain level here. Okay, now we've got them all, and there are all those already mapped buildings, but of course we need to zoom in a little bit more in order to see things here. So as I already mentioned, there are three kinds of objects, points. You simply have to select one of those before you can start mapping. You start that point. And if, for instance, one of those buildings would contain, for instance, a hotel whose name you would know, or a school whose name you would know, then you can simply make a click, and then you add a point at this location. And well, a point itself is, of course, of no great value because nobody else would know what this point should designate. So we have to assign features to this point. And that's where the tab on the left comes into play. So you see there are a couple of suggestions, different categories, whatever can be, for instance, a point. So a point could be, for instance, signify a hospital or a cafe. And if you would select, for instance, a cafe, then there are loads of other fields you can fill in. Just keep in mind that you don't have to fill in anything. And when you are remotely mapping and only looking at satellite imagery, you can map buildings, you can map roads, but you'll never know the names of those buildings. So just then stick to the feature and don't fill in anything which you really don't know. We often see features where the name reads something like, I don't know the name, or this is a street or something like that. Please don't do that. Names are reserved for the name as it is really called on the ground on that location. And if you don't know anything in particular, leave it out. So in this case, we don't want to add a cafe here because it's highly unlikely that there is one here. Let's get away with that. So we don't even need the point in here. So the next more complex feature would be align. Lines, of course, are roads. And when we want to map one of those buildings, there is an access way in here. So we could want to map that. So we start with a line, and then we simply have to add points. And when we are talking about roads, it is very important that we do not map isolated roads. People want to get there, so we need to preserve a road network. So when mapping a road, you should always start at an existing road. And when you move the cursor in here and you can connect to other objects, you see that those objects are highlighted. So make sure the correct one, in this case, this Avenue Cupway, is highlighted. Once click, you've got the first point, and then you can move the cursor and add other points as required. And with a double click, you finish. Then again, nobody knows what a line is without any added parameters. Could be a road, could be a river, could be a railway line, could be many things. So again, here you have some suggestions. And in this case, it will certainly be a minor road. And suggestions here, in this case, one would call it a service road, which only accesses individual buildings, or in this case, this looks rather industrial. So service road would be the proper one in here. And again, we don't fill in anything else in here because we don't know anything more. We cannot reliably say something about the surface. Well, if it's unsurfaced, it's pretty well visible, but anything else, and in particular, the name, is not known to us. And well, please keep in mind that ways often need to be in a certain direction because it is a sequence of lines. If it's a general road, it really doesn't matter where you begin and where you end. But if you know there is a one-way street, then the direction in which this road is oriented should, of course, be the one-way direction. And when you are mapping waterways, then it should be the direction of flow. So area, that's simply a closed sequence of nodes. So if we want to map this building here, we roughly start here and go there, here, and there. Yeah, we are done with it. You can also escape. Well, this shape doesn't look perfect. So first of all, we'll have to use building features and then building. It's a generic building. We don't know much about it. Leave it as it is. What we shouldn't leave as it is the building shape, because I guess some 80 or 90%, if not even more, buildings in this world will be rectangular, and that's how we'd like to draw them. So when you select them, the building, you can hit Q, and that squares the corners of the building so that it looks nicely. You can also use your right mouse button to open a context menu, and that's what I was using, square of the building. That would be shortcut Q. You can also move the building once you've drawn it, or flip it if this would be required, rotate it. So there are a couple of editing options. And of course, you can also delete anything which you had been drawing previously. So something else which occurs pretty frequently, if there would be a building close to this one, which is very close, but you wouldn't want to connect it, then you might easily run into trouble placing your points, because when you come pretty close, then it will snap. If you want to prevent snapping, simply press the Alt key while you're moving the cursor. Now that you prevent any connection to existing items, and you can start mapping arbitrarily close to existing shapes without connecting to them. When you're mapping in densely populated areas, pressing down the Alt key while you're looking for something where you could place the first point will be something really important. Now it's pressed, and you see there's no longer this highlighting interaction. Only when I release the button, it tries to connect to existing features when you come very close, which of course is what you want to do if you're mapping road networks. Okay, let me just add how you want to do that when you're not mapping individually, but using it from our tasking manager. That's a bit of a different story. So one thing I forgot. When you have mapped something, when you mapped something and want to I'm not sure what are the appropriate tags or features you can assign. There is a website in the OpenStreetMap wiki, that is the map features page in wiki.openstreetmap.org. And this is a very extensive list of what the community agreed upon are appropriate features. And there's really, it's loosely grouped in here, and there's really something for everything. So for instance, if you want to map a hospital, you can just look for hospital. Okay, and there you are. You see that there is amenity hospital. So it's among the amenities, you can look for that. And if you want to know more about how to tag things, you can follow the link where this particular feature is explained in a bit more detail. And it also says, for instance, the medical centers with just outpatient care and no longer term stays should not be considered hospital, should be called a clinic. individual doctor's office is simply doctors. So there are some recommendations how to tag and how not to tag. Typically, how you map everything, and sometimes there are even a couple of more explanations, such as how you could tag other features in connection with a hospital. So the wiki is typically pretty exhaustive in how to tag particular things. And when you're not sure what kind of object that should be called, then you should start with this map features page. It is typically the best available resource. Yeah, I wanted to tell you something more about the second avenue, how to get started with mapping an ID. And that would be using our tasking manager, tasks.osm.org. Again, before you can do anything useful, don't forget to log into here. It's the same account as with the OpenStreetMap website. So, and then you go to explore projects, and then you can look for something. For instance, as you're taking part in this webinar, I'm pretty sure you would be looking for projects for beginner mappers. And yeah, that's more than enough is still available. Let's go into there. You can read a bit of the background story. Typically, in this description here, you can see which organization was providing that. In this case, it is the humanitarian OpenStreetMap itself. And just important, have a look who can map. All users can map. There can be restrictions on projects, and then you should have to contribute. And then you will see a task grid in here which is color-coded. The white squares will be available for mapping. Validation is something for experienced mappers, so you don't want to select one of those blue squares. Yellow means more mapping needed, so it's basically the same as white. Green ones would be the finished ones. So in this case, there is still plenty to map. You can either leave it up to the software to choose a task for you. That would be just hit the button, map a task, or you can also just go in here and select one of those which are of interest to you. Then make sure that the appropriate editor is selected. I think if you don't change anything in your preferences available up here, ID should be the default. Then say map selected task. And now this looks somewhat familiar. The left 2/3 of the screen are pretty much the same as what I've been showing you right now. So it's an embedded version of ID, which means that here on the right, there is a portion which is still supplied from this tasking manager software. So, there are a couple of bits. You might want to see if there is some history. There are no comments in here. Previous mappers or other people might have left a comment about what trouble they had or what they have done. So it's always a good idea to have a look at the history. The history already contains a few bits because, well, quite a chance that I was selecting this one. I was in here before that meeting and had a look what is available here to show you. So you can review the project instructions. This is quite good because the main website here is now no longer visible from the tasking manager. So you should always carefully go through these. They will tell you what's about to be mapped, and in this case, it will tell you which imagery to use. In this case, the Bing imagery, because if has the highest resolution here, it'll tell you what to do if existing mapping doesn't match quite well. Tells you anything about the buildings you need to know. So for instance, use the Q key to square the corners. It's highlighted here, so that's really an important bit. The information that you should never let buildings touch each other. This is important as well. You should not need there's no need to map roads and paths and a few other general considerations. So please, before you start mapping on a project, take your time and review those instructions. They will exactly tell you what is important to map, what you shouldn't map here in this project, and anything more. So, okay, a couple of activity had already occurred in here. We can see there are already a few shapes in here, but yep, there is still something left to be mapped. And this is maybe quite instructive. Yeah, this is a building. Why am I so sure that this is a building? Simply because it casts a remarkable shadow. So this is not something directly on the ground. So, well, let's just review our knowledge. We select an area because we want to map a building. And typically, the roof is the best visible part of a building in this such a shape here. So we start here and go over here. And now, please don't try to map the building around this tree. It is more than obvious that the fourth corner of that building will be roughly here. So please map the building complete as it is. Once you're done, you can hit the escape key to exit the edit mode and then hit the Q key in order to shape it perfectly. And yeah, it only offers us buildings. Well, it seems convenient, but that's a big difference to what we've experienced before. Well, in the examples when you're mapping directly from the OpenStreetMap website, you had a couple of issues in here, a couple of options to choose from. That's one peculiarity of what's Tasking Manager. Project managers who set this up can make sure that you can only select those features which you are supposed to map in this project. And as this is a buildings only project, this is the only choice which is left for you. There is one more bit which you should keep in mind. I said we started mapping the geometry here from the roof because this is usually the best visible part. But all maps usually show the footprint. So you should use your right mouse key in here and select Move tool, and then you can move it. And you should move it here to the origin down there, so that typically when this is really important when you have a high-rise building, you typically can see where it is on the ground. It will nevertheless be easier to map the shape, the exact geometry from the roof. And after that, please move it so that it matches the footprint on the ground. This is particularly important if you map in densely built up cities with lots of high-rising buildings. If people map the roads properly, then you must also map the footprints of the buildings properly. Otherwise, the buildings would intersect with the roads, and that is, of course, nothing which occurs in reality, and we want to map close to reality. And yeah, then you can continue mapping on the next shape. And once you're done with everything, you return here to the completion tab. And then there are a few choices. If you think you've mapped your task square completely with everything there was to map, you would press yes. If you need to stop that prematurely, you hit no. The task is not completely mapped. Someone else, or maybe you later on, will return there and add the remaining features. The imagery is bad should only be left for cases when the imagery is has either absolutely insufficient resolution or significant cloud cover. If it's just a bit blurry, this is not bad imagery, but bad imagery means really more or less nothing can be mapped in here. And if there is anything you're unsure about, this would be the place where you can leave a comment. For instance, I'm not sure about the object in the upper right corner. Would someone else have a look at it? And then you submit the task. Whatever choice you've made in here, you will then submit the task, and then you are returned to the Tasking Manager page and could select another task or even a different project. So this is about the introduction I could give you, how this user interface will look like. And we've learned about three main important types of objects: the points, the lines, and the areas. And I've shown you how to get to ID at all, both from the OpenStreetMap website as well as from what's Tasking Manager. And yeah, always keep in mind, zoom in sufficiently. Either this one here will tell you, or remember that blue text about hidden features might be visible. Always make sure you zoom in to see all previously mapped features so that we do not get any duplicates in the database. That's about what I was going to present in here. Do we have any questions which are not yet answered? Does not. So nothing in the Q&A window either. That mean that I would hand over now to Mercy, who would then jump in and tell you more about editing, particularly how to make more complex buildings and what to keep in mind when mapping intersections of roads and waterways and bits more.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, Michael has said it all already during his part, and what you just have to do now is to make use of our tools that we have in ID editor to map and contribute to humanitarian OpenStreetMap. So I'll be sharing my screen now on how we are going to be doing that. Okay, can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
It's visible now, yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'll be making use of these tasks to explain more on the buildings, on how we can map complex buildings, and how we can also map multiples polygons. So I'll share this link for anyone that wants to continue. I will share it on the chat button. Okay, so let's go in. I hope everyone has created their account on Tax Manager, on Tax OSM, using the link they sent to the chat button. So I believe everyone have done that. So we'll be using this tax to explain more. Okay. So in this tax, we have to understand what they want and the imagery we are asked to use. So this tax is telling us to use Aries word imagery. So we'll be using Aries word imagery, and we are asked to map only building. We have to map only building. So, and also when you create your account, try and check your editor down here. Try and check your editor down here. That's ID editor, and pick any particular tax, any box. Okay, so edit now. We'll first of all, we have to check the imagery you are using. So we'll check the background settings. That's me, is using Aries word imagery. Try to confirm that. Okay, you are good to go. So in every tax, you are going to see that we have a pink, we have a pink borderline, like something like a pink borderline. We must not map beyond those pink boundaries, those big boundaries. We must not map beyond it. We have to map everything, every features you see inside these boundaries. So we have to zoom in. So you can use your mouse to zoom in, and you can use this button to zoom in and to zoom out. So okay, to make it more wide. So these are the features we have inside this our boundary. So we'll be making use of, we have Michael has explained earlier that we have point, line, and area. So the point is to pick a particular location and tell us the features we have on that particular place. Why the line is used for mapping of roads, waterways, highways, and so on. So we use areas to map buildings. We use area to map a small piece of vegetation land. We use the area to map a lot of places, a lot of features that we can see. A lot of features that we can see. So for the buildings, we'll be making use of area. So we have to zoom in. So we're making this feature first. You also have to check the edges and map everything out one after the other. You just have to check in very well. Okay. You see, this one is mapped already. So this is a building feature. So sometimes you may not have the access of having it being featured down. So you have to go back and narrow it down to building. So this is it here, building, click on it. So now the what you mapped has been featured down to building. So if you have more details about that building, so you can come here to give it a name of the building. If it's a boarding house, if it's a hostel or an hotel, so you just name it. Is a building, what level is it, the height, if you have the if you know the height of that particular building, put it, and if you have the address, you can also add to it. So you make use of this tag, when this tag, when you have other tags that you can add to it. But if you don't have, you just have to leave it like that. So now I don't know the name of the building, so I will have to cancel it. That's not an hotel. So it's just a building. So you're going to go on again to map another one using our short key. The short key for area is 3. So 3 on our keyboard. So you have picked 3 like that and map this one out. So this is a building. So we'll come here, select the feature. So the feature is selected like that. So I want to just make an example on how we can do multi-polygons of buildings where we have buildings that has a space in between. So I'll just be making a few examples here. I just want to make a few examples. So I just want to make a few examples on how we can have multi buildings in the same area. So let's just assume we have a building on it. We are assuming, so like I want to join these 2 buildings together to be on a single set. That's on a single feature. So we hold on your shift, we click on this, hold on your shift and click on this one too, and you're going to see something like merge. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to check the 2. So I've merged the 2 of them like that. like to make it feature out. Okay, that's just trying to join in multiple buildings in a particular area. So I'm just using that an example. So let me look for a building that we can actually practice that on using these tags. Okay, let me just map these tags and show us. Let me just continue to map these tags. So we have to check the edge of those buildings very well. So if you have any question, you can do well to drop it on the chat button. And you have to look at every features very well, every building they are seen on the imagery to confirm if it's a building or not. Because there are some buildings that look like rock and is not, and some are rock and while some are not rock. So you have to check it very well using that imagery. So I'm trying to pick those edges one after the other so that everything is going to align very well. So that is that for that. So we just have to check this one very well and pick out the edges one after the other. So when you're done, double click on the buildings. So zoom in. This is also like this one is just like a boys quarter building. So it's also a building that is part of it. So I'm making use of the shortcut key to pick my area. That's my keyboard, using my keyboard shortcut key. That's 3. So you can just make use of it to make your work very fast. So these two, okay. This is also a building here. Okay. Okay. So we can also map this road to that's going to make use of 2. Okay. So this road is a uncommercialized. So you have to look for it. It's either a major road Okay, so it's going to be an unclassified road. So, so we have some roads in between, which we can call them part road 2. We can call them part road 2. Let me map to show you some example. So all these minor road, we call them part road. Part road. Let me use highway so I can get. Okay, so hope you are following. So let me map the other buildings here, so I can show us how you are going to submit it. So if you do a mistake, you can easily use Ctrl Z to undo what you have done. If you did a mistake, you can use Ctrl Z. So if you check out the shortcut key here, we find out all the shortcut keys we have. All the shortcut keys we have. You're going to see them, how you can edit, how you can add your node and remove node. Ctrl Z to just backspace it and or cancel it. So and when you are mapping it, do not forget to add your feature types to it, because it will help you not to have an error in when you're uploading. So if I did not tag this now and I want to upload, you just have to tag it building. So is there any questions, anyone? Okay. If you have any question, you can do well to drop it on the chart. And also, if you want to perfect your edges of your what you are mapping, after mapping it, you just have to press on Q shortcut. So like now, you just press on your Q shortcut to perfect it. You see now, you just press on your, after clicking on it, just press on your Q shortcut to perfect it. And let me just show an example. Let me just show an example on how you can do that. Okay, now, and you want to perfect it, you just press on your Q keyboard. You click on it. Like, it's going to show that every edge is corrected. So it's going to perfect it for you. So let me delete this. It's not necessary. So now let me use this one as an example. So Q. So it has perfected like that. So just come target. Zoom in. Okay, this is another building. So put on your Q button. So you are perfect like that. I don't know. All these ones are not. I don't know if they are not like buildings. Just like a concrete floor. You know what I'm saying? But I'm seeing a fence with the shadow. So this one should be a building. Should be a building. So okay. You can also map this. So, let's zoom in and map this one too. So if you want to upload what you have done, you come to your right hand side. You're going to see it upload. So you click on it. You will see this comment section or anything you want to. Okay, you first upload first. You're going to upload first. You click on your upload button. You're going to see everything you want to upload there. So let's hashtag ID training. Okay, hashtag ID training. Okay, alt. Okay, let's make it alt OSM ID training. So, so you're going to upload it. So there's someone that you are going to have an error while uploading. So just try and check where you have an error. Go back there, make the changes before uploading. Because if you upload, it may not be in effect on people that are evaluating it. You have to correct you and um make correction on it. So you have to correct what you have mapped, check it very well, and upload. So it's going to upload directly to OpenStreetMap. So after uploading, done like that, that's what you have done has been uploaded. So when you want to submit this particular task on tax OS AutoSM, so you're going to come here and tell, like, if you have completed the task, you click on yes, and any comment you observe while mapping, you can write it there. What I observe is that we have spacious areas in this particular place, and the buildings are not that jam packed, like they are very space, they are spacious enough, and that's what I can just observe from it. But I've made complete mapping, so I will not say anything. I have to complete it before clicking on yes and making my comment. So let me map it complete and upload it. So if you have any questions, you can do well to drop it. Okay. 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 So let me tag everything that I've marked. Okay. So to just make your work easy, try and know your shortcuts. So that it's going to help you when mapping. Okay. Okay, let me upload now. Okay, I've uploaded already. So you're going to come to this comment section, click yes to complete the every section in that particular place. So you're going to comment if you have any comments here. Okay. 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 So we just submit the tax. So do you have anyone with any question? Yeah, someone comment on the chat that GSM is more faster. Yes, it's more faster because everything is just like it's very easy there. Like it's very easy using GSM software. It makes your works very fast. So thank you so much. Thank you. Jeffrey, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Marcy. So I'm just going to go ahead and take us through the last part I'm going to be talking about imagery offsets, issues and warnings, and then change set comments. Yeah, maybe and quickly to add on from what you were mentioning, Mercy, one good importance of OpenStreetMap is when we do mapping in OpenStreetMap, the data is openly available for anyone, anywhere to use. So it's all about contributing to open data. So if anyone wants to download like data for Tanzania as shapefiles, they can also download it and use it in the other projects. So if you think about like tracing things like in ArcMap or in QGIS, the difference is that the data will be going on your computer and you're not sharing it with any other person. Whereas when you create that data in OpenStreetMap, then you can use it in your project, but also make it available for anyone, anywhere else in the world to use. So I'm just going to go ahead and zoom into Tanzania here. I'm already logged in to my OpenStreetMap account. I'm going to be doing some editing in Dodoma, which is the capital, political capital for Tanzania. Yes, so as you can see here, the edit button is grayed out, but when you zoom in, it becomes active, meaning that you can start making changes to the map. So I'll go ahead here and choose ID editor as my editor. So you can see I've zoomed in here. What ID editor does, when you are zoomed out, it tries to hide some features and then they become more visible as you zoom in. It also helps to kind of make sure that people are not able to, to delete things when it's kind of zoomed out. So I'm zooming in now, and you can realize there are some things which are already mapped. So I can tell, sorry about that. Okay, yeah, so as you can see from this imagery, there is some features which have been mapped. I can know building, these ones have been mapped, these ones have not yet been mapped. So I know those that have been mapped because they have an outline around them. But you'll notice one thing, that the things which have been mapped already are not mapped well. You may think they're not mapped well because the object is not aligned well with the imagery. So what do you do in case you want to now continue mapping? There are two things which you can do. One, you can move the imagery to match the data, or you can also move the data to match the imagery. But it's advisable to move the imagery, to realign the imagery so that it aligns well with the existing data. So to get that realignment, you go to background settings, which is this button here. And then you go to down here where there is imagery offset. And then you expand that. So when you expand this button, you will notice that there is something here that comes up. So if I point in this gray area, the cursor changes, but you notice that now, if I move the cursor, it moves the imagery. So yeah, you can see what's happening. So I'm moving the imagery now to match the existing mapping. So I'm trying to realign this features so that they align with existing data. So the question is, where do these, why is there like a difference in alignment? It's because we have different imagery options available for mapping. So you may find like the people who did mapping first, they used Bing, and you may want to come and map later on, and you want to use, for example, Esri because it's more updated. But to be able to map using Esri, it's good that you collect the alignment, the major offset, so that it matches the existing data. And when you do that, now you can continue mapping, meaning that the features from that they were existing and the new ones that I'm creating will all now be having the same kind of offset. Okay, so I've just drawn a feature there, which is a building, and I'll go ahead and tag it as a building as Marshall was showing you. Okay, and I'm done. So that's how you correct imagery offset from background settings, and then imagery offset. Just point here, and then you can try to realign to correct that image. And I've said it's advisable to correct the offset of the imagery, not changing the, instead of like dragging the objects themselves that have been mapped. Yeah, so the other thing I would like us to look at issues and warnings. So data quality is very important in OpenStreetMap, and some of these editing tools have some features which are inbuilt, which help us to detect issues and warnings and errors. So the first way to see warnings and errors is when you are mapping. So for example, I may want to map this building, right? So I come here and trace it. And after tracing it, I want to save. So I go ahead and square it. So it's squared now. So if I come here and say, okay, I want to save my feature, I want to upload it to OpenStreetMap, check what is going to happen. It is giving you a warning. It's giving me a warning and saying area has no descriptive tag. So this is an error which has been detected by the by ID editor, and it's telling me this feature is actually missing tags, and I need to tag it. So you need to fix those errors before you upload to OpenStreetMap. So I'll click on that, and then it will highlight the feature that is missing the tags. Then I'll go ahead and tag it as a building, and then I can save my changes. So that's how you, the first way how you can detect errors and warnings. The other way is if you have a building that is, for example, drawn and it is crossing a road, for example. So let me just show an example here. Okay, okay, I don't have a good example, but I'm just going to imagine there is a building here. So if you draw something like this, you can clearly see this is crossing over a road. So once you tag it as a building, ID editor is going to warn you right away that, this building is crosses a road, and yeah, that shouldn't be happening. Although there are some buildings which might be having roads passing underneath them, it's clearly obvious in this case that this building shouldn't be crossing that road. So what do you do? There are two options. I can either move this building by right clicking, and then I can go to move object here, which you can also access using shortcut M. So you can see now that I've clicked that, I can move my object. So now that I've moved it, the warning will no longer appear. or else if the building doesn't exist, the other option would be to delete it. So those are some of the ways how ID editor helps you to identify issues, and you need to fix those issues before you upload to OpenStreetMap. But there is also another way where you can find issues that are existing on the map and fix them. And sometimes these issues have been created by other mappers, but it's a collaborative effort as well to fix issues that are not okay on the map. So yeah, if I want to find issues in this area, I can come here and click on issues. Still, it is on your menu here. And you can also access it using shortcut I. So if I press I, it will highlight for me all the issues here. You have options here. You can check everything everywhere, or you can check everything in your view, like what you're currently viewing, or you can, check for your edits. So meaning that this will be checking all issues from your own mapping. So I'll just go ahead and choose everything everywhere and try to find an issue and fix it. So this is an issue which is building, process building. I'll click on that issue. So, and then zoom in to find where the problem is and try to fix it. So you can see here, these are two different buildings, where one building is actually crossing the other building. So one way to kind of fix that is to move one of the buildings. So I can move one of the buildings just a little. So now they are no longer crossing each other, and you can see the warning has disappeared from the map. There is also here, point has no tags. Like we said, everything you map in OpenStreetMap, it should be tagged. So if it's not tagged and someone uploaded it, then it becomes an issue. So I can see here someone added a point here, and it's not tagged. And I can know it is that point because it is blinking. So I have three options here. I can either tag the feature if I know what it is, or I can delete this feature. So I can clearly see there is nothing here. It's a building, someone just added a node on top, but did not tag it. So I'll go ahead and delete that. And it has, disappeared from the list here. So the number of warnings here is 22, and I can go to each of them and fix it. Point has no tags. 2 points in building are very close together. So yeah, someone drew a building, but then there is like 2 points. Yeah, maybe one of them is really not necessary. So I can, just select it and kind of delete it. Okay, so I fixed that. So whenever I fix an issue, it gets reduced. The number of warnings here kind of reduce. So that's how you can find issues on the map and you can fix them. And it's not that all warnings, you have to fix them. You may find a warning like road has no name and you don't know the name of that road. You don't make up a name, you just say ignore because you don't know what the name is. So you can ignore some of the errors that have been identified using this tool. The last thing I want to take us through is change set comments. So you can see here, I have 7 edits or 7 changes I've made to the map. I have not yet saved them or uploaded them to OpenStreetMap. And if I click on save, it's going to ask me here for a change set comment. So what is a change set comment? Change set comment is what you use to write a brief description of your contribution. And it is required, you should always add change set comments. Change set comments are a way for you to communicate with other contributors to OpenStreetMap out there what you were trying to add to the map. Because this is a collaborative project, different people are all mapping this map everywhere in the world. So if I add something, I should communicate and say, okay, when I added this, this is what I was trying to do. So a change set comment is a group of objects that you are, changes that you're making to the map. So I'll go ahead and add a comment here and say I've added buildings. I've also deleted points without tags, and also separated crossing buildings. So just make a description of the edits that you were trying to make to the map. In that way, you are communicating with other mappers out there about the changes you're making to the map. If you are new to editing OpenStreetMap, you can also say, I want someone to review my edits. That means other mappers can also review your edits and they can give you a feedback. So I'll go ahead and upload these changes. So right now, yeah, these changes have been uploaded to OpenStreetMap. If I want to view my changes, I can just click on this view changes. So it shows when the edits were made. So whenever you make a change to OpenStreetMap, it records when you made that change, who made it, and also someone can also come and check, and if they want to give me feedback, they can comment on my change set and we can have a discussion about it. So that's how you can add a change set comment. Also, change set comments are important to also keep your for your own memory, because you may come 5 years later and you mapped something on OpenStreetMap, but you don't remember exactly what you made in that change set. So it's also a way for you to remind yourself when you're making changes to OpenStreetMap. And also to avoid conflicts with other mappers, because you're not the only one mapping this place. Other people are also mapping. So for example, if I check this area, which is visible in this map, it has been mapped by these people, Johannes, Peter, Anita, Gottbert, and then Dickies. So yeah, there are other people that are mapping the same area. So it's good to have good communication with them, and we do that through adding change set comments. So those are the few tricks and tips I wanted to share, and I will hand it over to back to Michael to wrap up. Thank you.
All right, so just add our final.
Do I have any question in the chat that I have to answer, Michael?
No, nothing we didn't answer so far. All right, so yeah, well, that brings us to our final slide here. Should you have any questions which come up later on, you're not lost. You can send us an email, send it to mappersupport@hotosm.org. If you are more interested in what the training working group does, mainly those webinars and also the preparation of the LearnerOSM website, just send us a mail and we'll get in touch. You can also join the Slack operated by HOT through slack.hotosm.org. There you can get an invitation, and there will be a Mapper support channel on that Slack where you can also ask any questions which arise. And if you'd like to know more about what we do in general, the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team has a website which offers all kinds of information about its activities, the different working groups, if you'd like to get more involved. So for today, well, first of all, thanks here to my fellow speakers, Quintana Mercy and Jeffrey Cutteregger, and to our host from HOT, Sam Colchester, and of course to all of you here who have been with us for those 1.5 hours. And I'm hope we could answer your questions and give you a better start into the world of mapping with OpenStreetMap. As I said, this webinar will be recorded. Recording will be available soon after. And on HOT's YouTube channel, you can also find a couple of other webinars if you're interested. Well, and other than that, I hope to see you again when we produce a webinar on advanced ID topics, which will be in about 3 months' time. So if there are no further urgent questions, then I think we should be done for tonight. And yep, hope to see you again, as I said, and thanks for joining, and goodbye for now.
Yeah, bye everyone.